According to stats, we are the fastest growing G8 nation population-wise in the world. The reason? Immigration. But who's coming into our country? As taxpayers, we want to know whether government policies represent our best interests. Some considerations we'll be addressing today. Who's coming in our country? Are they a drain on taxpayers or a benefit to our economy? Are the skills of our new immigrants being effectively used or wasted? What constitutes a refugee? And a recent article pointed out a health issue, the rising incidence of tuberculosis being brought in by immigrants. Where are our safeguards? Joining me is immigration lawyer Sergio R. Sergio is also chair of the Ontario Bar Association's Citizenship and Immigration Section. Dr. Joshua Thamaraj is president of the Association of International Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. Our lines are open for you to call in with your comments and immigration questions anytime during this hour. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
This immigration issue that we're dealing with today is a very complex one. We're hoping to hit on the key ones during the hour. And right off the top, I mentioned that taxpayers are concerned who's coming into our country. We must be. We're taxpayers. We have a right to know who is. And if you look at the general trend, we are the fastest growing G8 nation population-wise, Canada, and this is not due to live births. It's due entirely to immigration. My biggest question to you is, do you feel that as a country we're prepared for the influx that's coming in now and that's going to be coming in even more in the next 5 years? Sergio.
Yeah, well, you pointed out some very interesting things, all of which are true. Number one, we have a demographic problem in this country. We have an aging population. People live longer. People live a better quality of life. The average age has gone up. People are also leaving the workforce. And the statistics will show you that in approximately 10 to 15 years, about 100% of the growth in the labor force will be due to immigration. So if we don't bring immigrants with the proper skills, we're not going to be able to meet the demands of the labor force. We are going to start facing shortages in occupations, much more so than we are facing right now, because now we do have shortages in select occupations. So we do need immigrants, and we need immigrants who have the proper skills, who will adapt to the needs of the marketplace. And the needs of the marketplace is what should be driving immigration policy. But instead, we have the tail wagging the dog policy, and we have a policy that tries to dictate to the market what immigrants it should absorb. And that's where we're failing. Because if we would concentrate on letting the market forces decide what type of immigration we are really in need, you will see a very different composition in the skill set that immigrants bring to this country. And I give you some examples. We have a need, a very pressing need, for electricians, plumbers, construction workers. Why? Because the construction workers, electricians, plumbers who came into this country came here in the 50s and 60s, primarily from Italy and Portugal, and they're now retiring. And when was the last time you interviewed or asked a child in school, would you like to be an electrician or a plumber when you grow up? No. Everybody wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, because obviously they tend to be more glamorous occupations in the public mind. But we have a pressing need for the skilled trades. However, we're not bringing enough of the skilled trades to this country, and instead we have a point system that is rewarding people with very high education in fields that may be, quite frankly, useless to us.
What types of fields, Sergio?
Without singling anybody out, because I believe that education is a valuable tool for everybody, and everybody should be proud of the education they received. We have people, for example, with PhDs in English, in philosophy, PhDs in religion, master's degrees in certain linguistics fields that are, quite frankly, useless because they do not translate well into finding a job. And, outside of academia, those skills are basically not appreciated in the labor force. However, on the other hand, we have, for example, a very severe shortage of physicians in this country. And I'm glad that Dr. Tambaraj is here today
for that purpose, yes.
because he's an orthopedic surgeon, and we have a horrendous shortage of qualified orthopedic surgeons in this country. However, the health occupations are kind of like a whole different kettle of fish because they are subject to different types of controls. We have shortages in the engineering fields. We don't produce enough engineers in this country. We have shortage of people who are tool and die makers, draftspeople. We don't produce enough. We don't have an educational system that is encouraging the creation of that type of skill set. Instead, we have an educational system that is, channeling students towards, university-level occupations. And what's happening is that at the same time, the crisis that we have in skills is exacerbated by an immigration policy that puts in the same queue the people who have the skills that we need, such as, doctors, engineers, computer programmers, with the PhD in English and the PhD in linguistics and philosophy. And that makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, Dr. Tambaraj, you really represent what Sergio was saying here, what is practically, actually wrong with the system. We're incredibly short of physicians, and frankly, something went wrong somewhere. On one hand, you hear that the universities failed dramatically to recruit enough students for this area. There was lack of foresight, in other words. And on the other hand, there are many foreign-trained doctors coming in this country that are more than qualified. They can easily write the exams, be placed in residencies, but for some reason, they're not being adequately used. For instance, yourself. For goodness sakes, you were educated in Edinburgh University,
yes,
well known, and your skill set is something needed in this country. Can you recap perhaps what Sergio was saying from your point of view as a skilled physician?
Yes, I think there's a disconnect between the needs and how we're integrating doctors into the system. As you rightly say, there is a great shortage of physicians, family doctors and specialists. In my situation, and I'll give my example, and it's mirrored by many others in our organization, there should be a roadmap or at least a route into which everyone can go so that we are assured of quality, we are assured that experienced doctors who claim experience have that experience. So in my case, for example, I was told that after 25 years as an orthopedic surgeon, with a medical registration in Great Britain, with a postgraduate degree from the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, I had to do 4 exams and to go for a 6-month assessment under a senior surgeon. So between January 2006 and February 2007, I passed the 4 exams. And then they told me, you're eligible for the assessment, but there is no spot for the assessment. So, and I'm not the only one in the same boat. We have a number of members in our organization, close to a few hundred, who have passed all the exams. Either there's no residency for the junior doctors, or there is no assessment for the senior doctors. So we've got to see how to address this disconnect, because it depends on the hat that you put on. If you put on the hat of a participant, like if I'm the participant, it's extremely unfair. Because you tell me to go through all this, and then there is no spot. And when I ask why there is no spot, the answer is there's no spot.
So well, no reasons are being given?
Well, the universities, which are supposed to create these assessment spots, don't do it. And for reasons known only to themselves. They don't have to answer to it. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario may not be holding them accountable. I don't know whether the government has to hold them accountable, but someone has to hold them accountable. Someone has to bell the cat and say, excuse me, if you tell someone to pass 4 exams, and they've passed it all. And all he needs is a 6-month assessment so that he can then become an orthopedic surgeon who can maybe do about 200 joint replacements a year to address the waiting list that's there. Someone's got to say, create that spot.
Now, Dr. Thambaraj, you've been here quite some time.
Yes.
You now represent an association of international physicians and surgeons of Ontario looking for jobs in this country. I'd like an overview from you after the break. And remember, for you, the viewer, our phone lines are open for you to call in with your questions and comments at any time. Take advantage. We've got an immigration lawyer with us as well. We'll be back after this. Stay tuned.